In today's passage, Jesus starts in Galilee with the disciples, but travels to Caesarea Philippi. This is an area that's over 20 miles away from the Sea of Galilee, so this was a significant journey for the disciples. Why would Jesus take them there? Well, Jesus is going to have a very important conversation with his followers this day, and Peter is going to have a big role in it, as you might guess. Caesarea Philippi was a port city on the Mediterranean Sea. It was a very important place in the Roman Empire. For there, many goods would be shipped through. Roman soldiers would come and go. Peter and Paul would each leave from this port when they were on their way to Rome, where they would ultimately die for their faith. In Caesarea Philippi, it was also a place where there were some significant religious spots. There was a temple to the god Pan, which was a pagan god of nature. So this was a very simple temple in a very beautiful natural area, perhaps a little bit like where we are today out here in the woods. It was a place where people would go and not worship our God, but worship nature instead. Also there was a temple that was built to the emperor. Herod had had this built to honor the Emperor Caesar, and people would come there to worship the governor. They would say that Caesar is Lord. And so to say that Jesus is Lord was always a very controversial statement. This gets us to where Jesus is taking us this day. If we turn to our Bibles in Matthew chapter 15, Jesus has a question for the disciples. He says this, "Who do people say that the Son of Man is?" Of course, the Son of Man was one of Jesus' favorite titles for himself. So basically, who do people say that I am? The disciples respond in verse 14, "Well, some say John the Baptist, others say Elijah, and others say Jeremiah or some of the other prophets." In other words, people know that Jesus is somebody important. Is he one of the great prophets of old who's come back from the dead? Has God sent him again? No. Jesus says, "But who do you say that I am?" And then leave it to Simon Peter. He speaks up and he says, "You are the Messiah, the Son of the living God." In other translations, "You are the Christ, the Son of the living God." This is a powerful statement. Peter is saying Jesus is not just a good teacher, even though he's a good teacher. He's not just a miracle worker, even though he does miracles. He's not just a nice guy. No, he is God, Christ, the Messiah, the Son of the living God. Peter makes a bold statement of faith when all the other disciples, none of them had spoken up to say this. Once again, Peter is identified as a leader of the disciples, someone who's speaking truth on behalf of all the disciples. Jesus replies and says, "You are blessed, Simon, son of John, because my Father in heaven has revealed this to you. You did not learn this from any human being. Now I say to you that you are Peter, which means rock. And on this rock I will build my church, and all the powers of hell will not conquer it. I will give you the keys to the kingdom of heaven. What you forbid on earth will be forbidden in heaven, and what you permit on earth will be permitted in heaven." Jesus speaks to Peter and he says, "You got it. You're exactly right. That's who I am. And here, Peter, is who you are. You've been known as Simon before. Simon means one who listens. But now you're going to be known as Peter, the rock on which I will build my church." What a compliment. Jesus is saying that Peter is this solid person who can be trusted to lead the church into the future. It's got to be the highest moment of Peter's life right now. Once again, Peter is a person of great faith. He says something that would have been very controversial in a world where Caesar was worshiped, where nature is worshiped, where so many things are worshiped. But to say, no, Jesus, he's the one who we're going to worship. You would think that Peter would have it all right from here on out, but if you thought that, well, you'd be mistaken. For not too long after that, or immediately after that, Jesus began to tell them why he was here. He began to predict his own death, that he was going to be going to Jerusalem, to be betrayed, to be handed over to people who would beat him and kill him, and ultimately he would die and rise from the dead. Of course, the disciples did not understand this. They couldn't comprehend what Jesus was saying here. And so Peter speaks up and confronts Jesus. He says this, Heaven forbid, Lord, this will never happen to you. Can you imagine that? He just told the Son of God that he doesn't know what he's talking about. Well, Jesus responds and he says this, "Get away from me, Satan. You are a dangerous trap to me. You are seeing things merely from a human point of view, not from God's." Ouch. We just went from the top to the bottom real quick. You went from being the rock on whom I'm going to build my church to, well, Satan, the voice of Satan. That's pretty scary. Once again, we see that Peter is a faithful but flawed disciple. He gets it, but he doesn't get it. You ever felt that way? You feel like you are really growing in your faith and you're really following the Lord and getting to where He's calling you to be, but then you stumble, you fall, you mess up. It's tough. It's painful. Remember, I told you that Peter will show us who Jesus is, but he also will show us who we are. We'll see that just like Peter, we can receive grace and forgiveness. Jesus didn't kick him out that day. He reprimanded him, and he reprimanded him hard, but he didn't kick him out. Peter would still be the rock. He would still be the one who would be the central leader of the church someday. Maybe in your groups you want to discuss times where you've had moments like this, moments of spiritual greatness or moments of spiritual struggle. Are there things like this where maybe you can share with each other, you can support each other, and you can pray for each other that we will continue to be the people that God calls us to be?